Chapter 10. It's time to do something. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As night settled over Dongshan City, merchants began packing up for the day. Both the foreign traders and local residents headed home. On the main street, a group of 20 or 30 towering minotaurs pushed heavily laden carts toward their temporary camp. Clad in rough animal hides, they gripped massive maces and hammers, their appearances intimidating, their strength undeniable. The Mania tribe, one of the Tianhan continent's lowest-ranking races, possessed raw power but lacked significant intelligence. Despite escalating tensions and border skirmishes between the Empire and the barbarian tribes, trade persisted. The Mania used their imposing physiques to hunt magical beasts, trading the materials to humans for essential goods. Of course, human merchants, known for their shrewdness, often took advantage of them. The Minotaurs had little choice. Lacking the means to produce these goods themselves, trade was their only path to survival, leaving them resentful but resigned to being fleeced. This particular group had exchanged 10 magical beast crystal cores for their carts of necessities, their expressions a mix of suppressed anger and weary acceptance. They'd definitely gotten ripped off. Their leader, a tall, middle-aged minotaur with an axe the size of a door strapped to his back, watched his tribesmen, his anger simmering. 10 crystal cores, hard-earned sacrifices from the hunt. Yet, they'd been swindled by these human profiteers. The more he thought about it, the more his blood boiled. If they weren't on human territory, and if Chieftain Xuanhuan hadn't ordered restraint, he would have cleaved that weasel-faced merchant in two. Suddenly, a company of human soldiers, clad in armor and wielding swords and bows, approached. The young general leading them halted them with a shout, "What's going on here?" The middle-aged minotaur replied, his voice tight with controlled fury, "We are traders from the barbarian tribes." "Why are we being stopped, General?" "Don't give me that. I can see your minotaurs. Don't you know about the tension between the kingdom and your people? You claim to be trading. Where are your permits?" The young commander was spoiling for a fight. The middle-aged minotaur glared, his eyes like saucers. "Permits? We don't need permits to trade," the young general, already on edge, snapped. "No permits? Then you're spies. Men, search them." Steel flashed as the soldiers surrounded the minotaurs, drawing their swords. The minotaurs, not to be intimidated, brandished their massive weapons. The situation became dangerously volatile, sending onlookers scrambling for cover, wondering, when did our soldiers start openly confronting the minotaurs like this? Just as tensions peaked, 100 soldiers in dark leather armor bearing sun and moon emblems arrived, led by a middle-aged general on horseback, broadsword in hand. What in the world is happening here? Who dares cause trouble in Dongshan City? His booming voice echoed through the street. "It's General Zhao!" someone exclaimed. The newcomer was Xuanhuan, Dongshan City's top general and a level 3 body refiner. "It's Xuanhuan. Why is he here?" The young general scowled and shouted, "General Zhao! These barbarian spies are trying to sabotage Dongshan City from the inside." With a roar, he lunged at the nearest minotaur, sword raised. The minotaur naturally defended himself, blocking the blow with his thick mace. Normally, the puny human wouldn't be able to do a thing, but something shocking happened. The sword sliced through the mace as if it were paper, continuing on to cleave the minotaur's arm with a sickening pop. The thick limb broke instantly. Silence. Then, a scream ripped through the air, and a full-scale brawl erupted. Seeing the violence, Xuanhuan had no time to assess the situation. "Kill them all!" he bellowed. The fighting intensified, blood splattering the cobblestones. Roars, screams, and the clash of weapons created a cacophony of carnage. Though outnumbered, the minotaurs fought with incredible strength, making it impossible for the soldiers to overwhelm them quickly. Suddenly, smoke billowed from the south of Dongshan City, and a faint cry echoed from the distance, "The treasury! The treasury is on fire!" Hearing this, the young general yelled to Xuanhuan, who was locked in combat with the middle-aged minotaur, "General! The treasury is burning! Thieves must be taking advantage of the chaos. I'll take my men to quell the unrest." Without waiting for a reply, he shouted an order, and the armored soldiers abruptly retreated and charged toward the burning district. Xuanhuan felt something was wrong, but he couldn't quite place it. and he was too busy fighting the Minotaur to dwell on it. Soon, fires broke out throughout the city. Chaos reigned, and people screamed, "The city's been breached. The barbarian Minotaurs are attacking." Soldiers raced through the streets, adding to the confusion. One group, in fancy uniforms, began cutting down foreigners on sight. At least 20 or 30 foreign merchants fell to their blades, provoking fierce resistance. They were all considered lower-class people, and they were done being treated this way. The city descended into utter chaos, spinning completely out of control. Chapter 12. What? You didn't enter the money warehouse. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Dongshan City, Wangjiang Tower. Usually, this place would be buzzing with activity after dark, all lit up and lively. But tonight, the city's choked with smoke, and the only sound is the clash of steel. Nobody's thinking about tea, wine, or tall tales. In a private room at the top of Wangjiang Tower, a richly dressed young couple sat across from each other, the man flanked by 4 armored guards. A pretty maid stood silently behind the woman, head bowed. The young man stared out at the chaos below, his handsome face etched with annoyance. "That Li Mufan," he said, a touch of anger in his voice. "He's turned the city upside down in no time." "I underestimated him," that the woman, strikingly beautiful, chuckled. "Your Majesty is right. He's been playing hide-and-seek, and it seems to have sharpened his skills." Seeing the king's scowl deepen, she smiled and shook her head. "Don't worry too much. We have 10,000 elite soldiers in the city. Just have the gates guarded. He won't get away, even if he were a mythical beast." The man's expression softened. He addressed 2 of the guards behind him. "Take my token to the city gates. Tell the generals that if the fugitive escapes, they'll answer for it with their heads." "Yes, Your Majesty." That the 2 guards vanished from the room in a flash. The woman's eyes flickered almost imperceptibly. She gazed out the window at the Yinsang River flowing from Yixian Gorge. "Your Majesty, the elven lands are just across the gorge. I hear they're rich in resources, and the elves themselves are gorgeous. When will you take me to visit?" That the young man shook his head. "That's a bit complicated. The elves have always looked down on us, treating us like dirt. Even as king, I'd face a lot of obstacles there. If you really want to go, you can join the tribute mission to the elves someday." The woman gave him a cool look, then smiled and shook her head slightly. "Never mind. We can talk about it later. For now, let's see how much trouble that man can cause." The man glared at the smoke-filled Dongshan City, his face darkening. "He's disrupting a key city and damaging our relations with another race. If I catch him, I'll have his head." But before he could finish the sentence, a frantic shout erupted outside the room. "Your Majesty! Queen! We're on fire! The building is on fire!" Meanwhile, across town, Li Mufan, clad in armor and brandishing a long sword, rode calmly through the chaotic streets of Dongshan City, a contingent of personal guards following close behind, a stark contrast to the turmoil around them. "Report!" A soldier rushed to his side, kneeling on one knee. "Your Majesty!" As ordered, Captain Zhang Tai led his men to set fires throughout the city. They've torched key locations like the treasury, the granary, the city lord's mansion, the horse stables, and Wangjiang Tower. Captain Zhang wants to know what's next. Li Mufan didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked, "How much did you pocket from helping Zhang Tai burn the treasury?" The soldier looked surprised. "Your Majesty, we didn't go inside the treasury. Captain Zhang saw the fire and immediately ordered us to add to it." "What? You didn't go inside the treasury?" Chapter 13. Be quick, grab a handful and run away. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Li Mufan blew a gasket. "Zhang Tai, that bonehead. If we don't move now, we'll miss our chance. Dongshan City's treasury supposedly has hundreds of thousands of gold coins, and he comes back empty-handed." He hesitated a beat, then roared, "Aqiang! Grab some sacks and take half the boys to hit the treasury. Grab everything you can. Anyone who tries to stop you, drop M. Yes, sir, Aqiang yelled and waved, and half the guards' battalion peeled off and headed straight for the treasury. Once they were out of earshot, Limufan snarled at the soldiers still kneeling, "You get up and tell Lu Long and Zhang Tai to get a move on. Grab what they can and meet us at the rendezvous point in half an hour." 30 minutes later, a bunch of soldiers in sun and moon leather armor hustled up to the city gate, only to find it bolted shut and the walls crawling with guards. Young general, leading the pack, shouted up at the gate, "We're with General Morong. We've got alien insurgents in the city. General Morong's ordered us out to scout the situation. Open the gate now." The city's gatekeeper, a burly middle-aged general in full armor, yelled back, "Isn't General Morong, the kingdom's golden boy, guarding his majesty in the royal city? What's he doing here?" The young general replied, "His majesty ordered the general to hunt down some fugitives. He saw the mess here and sent us ahead to scout. Open the gate, or you'll be answering to him." The defending general frowned, hesitant. "Got any proof?" The young guy tossed a wolf's head token up to the wall. "Here's your proof. Now open the gate." The general caught the token and examined it closely. A snarling wolf's head and the word Morong were etched on the bottom. He nodded. "It's Morong's all right. Hold your horses, folks. I'll get it open." He waved, and a guard scrambled down the wall. A few minutes later, the heavy gate creaked open. The defending general shouted, "All right, the gate's open. Get a move on." The young general murmured a few quick words to a soldier in plain clothes and a hat, then waved. The 200-strong group started jogging toward the opening, then, bam! Everything went south. The defending general bellowed, "Archers! Fire at will!" Instantly, archers lined the walls, and arrows started raining down. But they were in for a surprise. Those bloated soldiers reacted faster than expected. The moment the order was given, they dove for cover like scared rabbits, waiting for the arrow storm to pass. By the time the arrows landed, the gate was deserted. "They were expecting us. Let them have it." Someone yelled from under the wall, and the guys pulled out iron bows from under their coats, notched arrows, and returned fire. These weren't your garden variety bows, they were heavy-duty and armor-piercing. The bows twanged, a hail of arrows shot towards the wall, and screams echoed down. That one volley alone took down at least 50 soldiers. Chapter 14, Head-on Confrontation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What kind of bows are those? The general in charge of the city's defense yelled, "Fire! Open fire! Don't let them pin us down." Even though the 500 or 600 archers on the wall were rattled by the incoming arrows, they gritted their teeth and shot back. Unfortunately, the enemy below had retreated out of range, leaving the archers struggling to reach them. Worse yet, those guys were wearing thick, fine steel chainmail under their leather armor. Their arrows didn't stand a chance against that kind of protection, but the Royal Guard battalion was different. Their standard-issue bows were powerful and had excellent range. Even fired from a distance, their arrows were causing serious casualties. Plus, the Royal Guard was made up of elite soldiers, a cut above the regular troops. It was turning into a one-sided slaughter. In just a few moments, many soldiers had fallen on the city wall. If it kept up like this, no one would dare to show their face up there. The defending general saw what was happening and screamed, "Close the gates. Everyone attack. Get up there and kill those rebels." The heavy city gates slowly creaked shut, and a wave of war cries and clashing steel echoed from every direction. Limufan was taken aback. He saw countless soldiers on horseback and on foot pouring out from behind the city walls and side streets. They had walked right into an ambush. "Your Majesty, what do we do?" Lu Long, standing beside him, was visibly anxious as the enemy closed in. Limufan's veins throbbed on his forehead as his temper flared. "What do you think we do?" "We fight. Kill them." Lu Long roared and charged forward, leading the charge. Instantly, blood and body parts went flying. The guards, with their standard-issue steel longswords and protective chainmail, had the upper hand in the initial clash. Riding his horse in the center, protected by his men, Limufan watched the unfolding carnage. The gruesome scene didn't faze him. He shouted, "Zhang Tai! Take your men and cover the left flank. Yes, sir, came a booming reply from the battlefield. Lu Long, protect the right flank. Yes, sir, Lu Long bellowed, hacking down an enemy soldier. Cuihua. Hold the rear. Yes, sir, a clear female voice rang out. Cuihua, a second-level body refiner, was slightly stronger than Lu Long. Aqiang. Clear a path in front of me. Yes, master. Aqiang, a third-level body refiner, was the strongest fighter on Li Mufan's side. He was the only one capable of plowing through the enemy directly ahead. With Li Mufan's quick commands, the formation of his troops shifted, and they fought with renewed coordination. The battle intensified, and the bodies piled up. But a closer look revealed that the dead were almost entirely city defenders. The Royal Guard battalion soldiers weren't even getting scratched, the equipment gap was too significant. The steel longswords were lethal, while ordinary weapons couldn't penetrate the steel chainmail. On top of that, the individual strength of the soldiers varied greatly. It was like pitting a regular guy in street clothes with a wooden stick against a muscle-bound warrior in full armor with a broadsword. The outcome was never in doubt. On the left flank, Zhang Tai, a mountain of a man, wielded two swords, swinging them in wide arcs. Though not yet a master martial artist, the sharp swords and heavy armor made him a near unstoppable force. On the right flank, Lu Long held a sword with one hand. A proper general, he fought with skill, technique, and deadly precision. Covering the rear, Cuihua, a woman in a red military uniform, fought as fiercely as any man. Enhanced by gene modifications, she was a top-tier fighter in her class. Plus, her experience in the ring world had hardened her, making her moves efficient and lethal. The frontal assault was the most brutal, because Aqiang was nearly invincible. He wielded a custom-made Guangong glaive that Li Mufan had crafted for him. With each swing, he cut down men and horses, a true war god. On a tall building overlooking the city gate, Li Haotian watched Li Mufan directing the battle, his face grim. Standing beside him, Wang Mengyu, usually so composed, was visibly surprised. She marveled at the Royal Guard battalion's combat effectiveness, but she was even more astonished by Li Mufan's demeanor. In her mind, Li Mufan had always been gentle, weak, and agreeable. The calm, commanding figure she saw on the battlefield shattered that image. Has he been faking it all along? Wang Mengyu wondered, quickly dismissing the thought. If he were that calculating, how could he have been so flustered on our wedding night? Lost in her thoughts, she heard Li Haotian say gravely, Sister Wang, I didn't expect him to be this hard to handle. What do you make of this situation? Wang Mengyu took a breath and composed herself. She studied the battlefield and said calmly, Your Majesty, don't worry. They might be fierce, but the rebels are outnumbered. If they can hold them off for a little while, they'll be exhausted. Then, we send in General Xuanhuan and his elite troops to charge, and we can capture them alive. Li Haotian sighed. That's what I thought. They're relying on advanced weaponry. I don't know where they got so much gear. I'll need to investigate. He paused and addressed the guards behind him. Tell Xuanhuan to get here ASAP and deal with the barbarian bull tribe. If he's not here within the hour, he can pack his bags. The guards replied respectfully, Your Majesty, word is that General Zhao has already dealt with the barbarian bull tribe and is on his way with his personal guard battalion. Good, good. Li Haotian nodded, his gaze returning to the battlefield with a dark expression. Chapter 15 Cuihua's Strength. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. As time wore on, the tide of battle began to shift. Though the guards battalion soldiers were brave, their stamina was finite. After a long, brutal fight, exhaustion set in, and injuries began to mount. The enemy just kept coming. If they wasted themselves here, the whole battalion risked being wiped out. Li Mufan saw it all unfolding, but the enemy lines were too dense to break through to the gate anytime soon. He was debating whether to send Cuihua to help Aqiang breach the blockade when a thunder of hooves echoed from the distance. Rebels, your arrogance ends now. Xuanhuan is here, his voice preceded him. A glance revealed a cavalry unit charging towards them, led by a general in sun and moon armor, wielding a massive greatsword. It could only be Xuanhuan. Li Mufan's heart leaped. This guy was a third-level body refiner. If he cut loose, the consequences would be devastating. He made a snap decision. Lu Long. Go assist Cuihua and stop Xuanhuan. Zhang Tai, help Aqiang and smash through the enemy front now. Yes, sir, that they roared back. Lu Long ran toward the rear, running his sword through an enemy soldier. Zhang Tai plowed into the thick of the fight alongside Aqiang, hacking and slashing. Xuanhuan was on them in a heartbeat, encountering a guards battalion soldier in blood-soaked chainmail. Without a word, he raised his great sword and swung. With a deafening clang, the guardsman was thrown backward by the force of the blow, bowling over 4 or 5 men before finally collapsing. He tried to rise unsteadily, then fell again. Clearly, he was too injured to get back on his feet. Xuanhuan was taken aback. The soldier who should have been cleaved in two had actually survived his strike. He examined his great sword. There was a chip in the blade of the once deadly weapon. Frowning, he thought, they say the Sequoia army is tough. Guess it's true. What a pity, though. Before he could finish the thought, a flash of steel cut through the air toward him. Startled, Xuanhuan hastily raised his greatsword to parry. A ringing impact shuddered through the blade, unhorsing him in an instant. Steadying himself, he looked around, spotting a woman in blood-red armor glaring at him, barely 20, her beautiful face was smeared with blood, transforming her into a battlefield valkyrie. Traitor! Xuanhuan roared. You dare sneak attack me! Prepare to die by the sword. That they clashed instantly. The longer the fight went on, the more surprised Xuanhuan became. This woman was at the second level of the body refining realm, a whole level below him. He should have ended this in 10 moves, tops, but she was incredibly strong, only slightly weaker than him, with reactions and instincts far beyond the ordinary. He couldn't gain an advantage. Cuihua had taken a gene enhancer, boosting her physical functions by 40%, she was at the second level and couldn't outright defeat him, but she could definitely hold her own. After a dozen moves, Lu Long joined the fray, and together they began to overpower Xuanhuan, forcing him to defend and unable to retaliate. Chapter 16 Lift Up My Fuel Barrel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the other side, Aqiang, following Li Mufan's orders, went into a frenzy, cutting a path through the enemy. He was unstoppable. Zhang Tai joined the frontal assault as well, his long sword flashed, taking down several soldiers with each swing. The guards battalion, fired up by their leaders, fought with renewed vigor, cutting down enemies left and right. The tide of battle had turned again. From a high building nearby, Li Haotian watched with a dark expression. He'd been sure Xuanhuan's arrival would crush the rebels, but they were putting up a far tougher fight than expected. Even Xuanhuan was in danger of being overwhelmed. Morale was plummeting. Enraged, Li Haotian slammed his fist on the table. I should have brought Murongying. With him here, these rebels wouldn't stand a chance. They're butchering my kingdom's army with their fancy weapons. I want them all dead, their bodies hung from the city gates for days. I'm so angry. Wang Mengyu, also surprised by the guard's strength, frowned at Li Haotian's outburst. Your Majesty, there's no need to panic. They're running out of steam. If we just hold the gate and rotate our troops to wear them down, we'll win by midday. Li Haotian took a deep breath and told the guards behind him, did you hear that? Tell Xuanhuan to hold the city gate. Yes, Your Majesty. Wang Mengyu knew the gate was key, and Li Mufan knew it too. The problem was the sheer number of soldiers guarding it, making a breakthrough difficult. Seeing his own troops tiring, he gritted his teeth and roared, kill. Follow me. We break through the gate. He charged straight into the thick of the fight. Sire, the guards, seeing their leaders move, were alarmed and immediately followed. Any harm to Li Mufan could ruin everything. In the distance, Lu Long heard Li Mufan shout. He looked and saw his king charging towards the gate with a sword. He was shocked and told Cuihua, General, hold off Xuanhuan. I'll protect the young master. Cuihua ignored him. She only listened to Li Mufan. Lu Long didn't press it, faking an attack on Xuanhuan before turning to reinforce the front. Li Mufan, in heavy armor, wielding a top-quality sword, and with a red-plumed helmet, looked every bit the part. More importantly, he had trained in swordsmanship since childhood, and he had sharpened his skills in the system space. No regular soldier could stand against him. He roared as he advanced, cutting down 2 soldiers in quick succession, his armor quickly stained with blood. He looked less like a king and more like a young general leading the charge. His soldiers, inspired by his bravery, fought with renewed determination. Soon, Lu Long joined him, with Aqiang to the left and Li Mufan in the center, like 3 arrows piercing the enemy lines. The guards pushed forward with such force that the defenders began to break, unwilling to face them head-on. Useless. All of them are useless, Li Haotian shouted from above, helpless. He never imagined 200 men could cause so much trouble. Li Mufan, wiping the blood from his face, saw the city gate only a short distance away. Aqiang. Get the fuel barrels up here. Chapter 17. Aqiang, you threw it crookedly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Mufan's voice boomed, silencing everyone. Even Li Haotian, caught up in his own rage, was stunned. He swiveled his head towards Wang Mengyu, a puzzled frown furrowing his brow. Fuel barrel? What in the world is a fuel barrel? Wang Mengyu simply shook her head, her gaze drawn to the young man who was now bellowing across the field. Her expression was unreadable as she watched him. On the battlefield, Aqiang, hearing Li Mufan's shout, grabbed a red iron barrel from the supply wagon. He struck a flint, igniting a thin fuse attached to the barrel's lid. Sparks flew as the fuse rapidly burned down. Then, bracing himself, he heaved the iron barrel towards the city gate. What followed was a scene no one would ever forget. The red iron barrel arced gracefully through the air before slamming into the ground with a resounding crash. Then, a deafening explosion ripped through the sky. Boom! A colossal fireball erupted, laced with crimson streaks of blood, as a shockwave, like a hurricane, sent the nearby city guards flying. Smoke and dust billowed, obscuring the sky above the city gate. Fighting ceased as everyone stood transfixed by the spectacle. Silence descended, broken only by the crackling fire. Even Li Mufan was momentarily stunned. He hadn't anticipated the sheer destructive power of the fuel barrel. The explosion had slammed into his chest with the force of a heavyweight punch, almost stealing his breath. All eyes were glued to the city gate. Through the swirling smoke, they could see that the city guards clustered near the gate had been obliterated, reduced to nothing. The upper section of the imposing city wall had crumbled, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. What kind of weapon could unleash such terrifying carnage? Li Mufan was momentarily speechless. Regaining his wits, he roared, Aqiang. You missed. Blow the gate itself. Yes, sir, Aqiang answered with gusto, and everyone watched as he expertly hauled another iron barrel from the wagon, igniting the fuse with practiced ease. The city guards exchanged terrified glances, a collective scream building in their throats, before they bolted, scattering in every direction. No way were they going to stick around to get blown to smithereens. This time, the fuel barrel landed squarely against the massive city gate. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion reverberated through the air. Billowing smoke and debris filled the sky as both heavy door panels splintered and collapsed. Li Mufan bellowed, move it or lose it. If you don't get out now, you never will. Help the wounded, carry them on your backs. Retreat! With that, he spurred his horse forward, charging towards the shattered gate. The remaining guards snapped to attention, shouting encouragement as they hoisted their injured comrades onto their backs, following Li Mufan's lead and surging forward. According to their plan, Lu Long would lead the charge once the gate was breached, with Li Mufan and Zhang Tai providing support in the middle. Aqiang and Cuihua would cover the rear, while Fan Qingyue would meet them outside the city. The remaining defenders watched as the guards' camp poured through the gate, one by one. Aqiang and Cuihua, the lethal duo, stood guard, their faces grim and unreadable. Hesitation gripped them. On one hand, they feared the 2 killers, but on the other, they were terrified of another fuel barrel explosion. They might just wet themselves if it happened again. In the attic, Li Haotian stared, his face a mask of thunderous rage, as the guards' camp flooded out of the city. He was beyond words. If he hadn't been so concerned about maintaining his royal composure, he would have lost it then and there. Chapter 18, Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Mingyu watched the man disappear through the city gates, sighed softly, and paused. He murmured, "Your Majesty, venturing into the lands beyond the city could be seen as a provocation by the elves. It's a delicate situation." Li Haotian, understanding the implications, hissed through gritted teeth, "I swear, one day I'll personally see Li Mufan's head on a pike." Wang Mingyu sighed, "Your Majesty, I've noticed how this man has become increasingly resourceful during his escape. His strategic thinking has evolved. His escape from the kingdom is like a hawk set free or a dragon returned to the ocean. He may surprise us." Li Haotian frowned. "Are you having second thoughts?" Wang Mingyu smiled and shook his head. "I stand by my actions. Your Majesty, your talent and wisdom far surpass his. Otherwise, he wouldn't be running scared. My thought is, now that things have reached this point, we could use this to our advantage. Let's give him some rope to become careless and to allow us to test his motives. We can then watch his next move. He'll be in elven territory. As long as we know his location, we can simply increase our tribute to the elves next year." "Excellent. Princess, you're brilliant. No matter how strong these rebels get, they're no match for the elves. We'll just let them do our dirty work. Li Mufan won't stand a chance." Li Haotian, not lacking in intelligence, immediately grasped the idea. He smirked, "Let's go, let's send my brother on his way. Fall back. Fall back, towards Yixian Gorge." Lu Long shouted, commanding the remaining guards. The sound of approaching hooves echoed in the distance. Squinting, he made out the red cloak of a knight riding towards them. Relief washed over him. He hurried to Li Mufan's side, bowed his head and said, "Your Majesty, General Fan is here." Li Mufan nodded. "Good. Proceed to Yixian Gorge as planned." Moments later, Fan Qingyue arrived with 50 guards from the Royal Battalion and 200 warhorses. After the initial chaos, Li Mufan instructed Fan Qingyue to disguise her men as horse traders and lead the horses out of the city to avoid detection. Now, with reinforcements and fresh mounts, the generals felt a surge of hope. The recent battle had left them exhausted. Fan Qingyue, reporting for duty, "Your Majesty." Fan Qingyue dismounted and knelt, seeing that Li Mufan, though covered in blood, seemed unharmed. She felt a huge wave of relief. Li Mufan nodded. "Rise, General Fan. Is the ferry I requested ready?" Fan Qingyue blushed slightly. "I followed your orders and searched for a ferry. I found some idle elven fishing boats at a dock on the Yinsang River. I tried to buy them, but..." "But what?" Li Mufan asked, his expression unchanged. Fan Qingyue replied, "The elves refuse to do business with humans. So, I had no choice but to cut down trees along the river and build a few dozen bamboo rafts." Li Mufan sighed. "You did well. The elves have always been arrogant. One day, they'll learn not to underestimate me." After a pause, he said to Lu Long, "We can't stay here. Help those who can't walk onto the horses. We ride to Yixian Gorge." Lu Long stood motionless, seemingly hesitant. Li Mufan frowned slightly. "What is it?" Lu Long, his head bowed, spoke in a low voice, "Your Majesty, we lost more than 10 good men." Li Mufan's voice rose, "Lu Long, I ordered you to get our wounded on the horses. Did you not hear me? Follow the order." "Yes, sir," Lu Long replied, his voice cracking. When he looked up, he saw a trace of sadness on Li Mufan's usually stoic face, and a glimmer of tears in his determined eyes. "Your Majesty," Fan Qingyue said softly, sharing in Li Mufan's grief. Everyone, the surviving members of the Royal Guard Battalion, felt it too. They loved their king, and felt the weight of the losses with him. Chapter 19, Lament. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yixian Gorge, like its name suggests, is a canyon carved between two towering cliffs. The Yinsang River roars through it, plunging onto the plain below and nourishing the land. Standing on that plain, not far from the gorge, Li Mufan gazed at the spectacular waterfall created by the river's descent, hundreds of feet down the cliff face. His mind raced. "Your Majesty, we've buried all the fallen," Fan Qingyue said quietly. Startled from his thoughts, Li Mufan asked, "How are the others?" Fan Qingyue lowered his voice. "Thanks to the medicine Aqiang brought, a lot of the guys are going to be okay. 18 were too far gone." "Understood. Tell everyone to gather around." "Yes, Your Majesty." A short time later, Li Mufan faced the 200-plus soldiers standing before him. He paused, then spoke with a heavy heart. "I started with 1,000 brothers in the Sequoia Guard Battalion. Now, after the palace coup, there are only 230-something left. Who am I to ask you to risk your lives for me like this?" Immediately, Lu Long knelt on one knee and declared, "Your Majesty, don't blame yourself. Protecting you is our duty. Dying for you is an honor." Li Mufan looked at Lu Long and the other soldiers, then sighed. "I know what you're all feeling. You're the best warriors in the kingdom, but I'm not the king anymore. Your Majesty." His words shocked everyone, and they all knelt. Zhang Tai shouted, "Your Majesty, don't give up hope. We'll fight our way back to the royal city and help you take back the throne, even if it kills us." The others echoed him, "Your Majesty, please reconsider." Li Mufan's heart swelled as he looked at the kneeling soldiers. His eyes stung with tears. Seeing that Li Mufan hadn't responded, Lu Long grew worried. "If Your Majesty gives up the throne, we have no reason to kneel here." The guards roared in agreement, "Your Majesty, please reconsider." Silence stretched out. Finally, Li Mufan spoke slowly. "I, Li Mufan, am grateful for your loyalty, but my time as king is over. Let's not speak of it again. From now on, if you'll have me, just call me young master. There's no need for formalities." "But..." They hesitated. Lu Long and Zhang Tai started to protest, but Li Mufan cut them off with a wave. "It's settled. Let's leave our past behind. Please, everyone, stand up." When the soldiers didn't move, Li Mufan glared at Lu Long. Lu Long, jolted, immediately understood. He shouted, "Thank you, Your Majesty." The soldiers repeated, "Thank you, Your Majesty." "You." Li Mufan smiled wryly, seeing that they still called him Your Majesty. It wasn't that he didn't want to be king, but the title was too dangerous. If it got out, the Sun and Moon Kingdom would come after him, and even the Yunqin Empire, which had assumed he was dead, wouldn't let him go. It was better to lay low for now. Once he had the strength, taking back the throne would be easy. Shaking his head, he turned serious. "Lu Long, lead the men in paying our respects to the 18 who fell." "Yes." Lu Long spun around and barked, "Form up." The men, instantly shedding their sadness, snapped into 4 lines, according to their training. "Present arms." With a synchronized swish. They raised their swords, eyes fixed on the 18 graves along the riverbank. The mournful, powerful bugle call of the military camp sounded, not a charge, but a lament, a farewell to fallen comrades. The sad notes echoed through Yixian Gorge, and the soldiers' eyes glistened. Li Mufan walked to the front of the formation, staring at the graves of the 18 heroes. His voice was low. "I, Li Mufan, couldn't lead you to victory in life, but I won't let you be ghosts in a foreign land in death." He accepted a bouquet of white flowers from Fan Qingyue and walked slowly to each grave, placing the flowers before it. Chapter 20. My beloved, you dare to treat me as an idiot. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The horn's mournful sound grew louder. Even the toughest men were weeping as their king honored their fallen brothers with flowers. It was the highest honor a soldier could receive. Afterward, a soft sob reached Li Mufan's ears. He sighed, clasped his hands behind his back, and recited, "Loyal bones rest in every green hill. Why need we return, wrapped in burial shroud? Rest here, brothers. I will bring others to visit you soon." Then, he turned to face his men. "Brothers," he called out, "now isn't the time for sadness. Let's get on the rafts and get out of here." "To the rafts!" Lu Long choked back tears and roared. Suddenly, laughter echoed from the nearby woods. "Loyal bones rest in every green hill, wrapped in burial shroud. When did you pick up poetry, Brother Wang?" The soldiers were shocked and turned toward the sound. A group of about 200 emerged from the trees. 2 figures in ornate robes stood out. Their presence commanded attention. The royal guard recognized them instantly, Li Haotian and Wang Mengyu. The air crackled with tension after their recent battle. Li Mufan was caught off guard. He thought Li Haotian wouldn't dare to follow them into elven territory. He'd let his guard down. The audacity! But the small number of soldiers puzzled him. How could a couple hundred men hope to stop them after thousands had failed? He sneered. "Well, if it isn't Brother Wang. You don't think you can stop me with this little posse, do you?" Li Haotian returned the sneer. "Li Mufan, you're a dog with no home. Letting you live a few more days doesn't matter to me. But we're brothers, after all. I couldn't stand to see you wander lost, so I came to wish you farewell." Li Mufan laughed. "How noble of you, Brother Wang. I admire your loyalty. I'll be sure to spread the word about your brotherhood and honorable character, so the world will know the kind of man you are." "You." Li Haotian sputtered, "You wouldn't dare. Are you trying to get yourself killed by the Empire?" Li Mufan scoffed. "The Empire won't stand for being challenged. You think they'll let me get away with what happened today?" "Humph!" Li Haotian, silenced, simply snorted. Seeing this, Wang Mengyu smiled gently, gracefully glided forward, curtsied, and said, "Mengyu greets your majesty. The palace was in chaos that day, and I was frantic when I couldn't find you. I'm relieved to see you safe." Li Mufan sneered. "Spare me the act. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Wang Mengyu said calmly, "Your majesty misunderstands. An assassin set fire to the palace, causing chaos. The current emperor led the forces that restored order. However, he couldn't find you afterward and feared the worst. Since ancient times, a country cannot be without a leader. After discussing with the officials, the prime minister decided King Qing would take the throne. The empire has already agreed. I'm glad to see you safe, but the situation is beyond our control. I hope you won't hold a grudge." The soldiers exchanged glances. Wang Mengyu's explanation sounded perfectly reasonable.